Right, it's the 9th of the 4th, 2025, and I got a little bit tipsy last night. Although I didn't have as much as several nights ago, a couple of nights ago or whatever, I still felt as tipsy as that specific day. I did have 4 Red Bulls, which is a little bit naughty because they're energy drinks and they've got a lot of caffeine and bad bits in them. But it did cause me to cut down a little bit on the alcohol when I was drinking them. So I had a bit of vodka, obviously. Just 2 gin and tonic type 5% cans, so that's an improvement. And I did have quite a bit of vodka, but it was nowhere near as what it was the other night, where it's 3/4 of a litre bottle. That was really stupid of me. So I smoked 20 fags. I don't know how I got through that many, but you know, I've been smoking quite a lot lately. Today I'm going to have to cut down because obviously I was supposed to cut down yesterday or last night, but I just got in the habit of smoking because I got myself slightly more addicted again, so that's what's happened there. As far as the burning problem goes, it was here and there. It wasn't too bad last night, but it was still, I still feel pretty bad from it today. It's still to a level where I'd probably call 111 if it was this time last year and I woke up feeling like this today. So it's still quite bad, but nowhere near as bad as what it was over the last few days. There was a couple of little bites tied to erection, but it wasn't really too bad. And going out, there's a cell call in my direction. Several people photograph me. One of them gets a little bit agitated and gives that evil eye as he photographs me. A couple of black and blue cars, sexual cars or whatever. There's a black and a greyish blue that occur. On the bridge, there's a little bit of colliding, a bit worse than usual, but nothing too drastic. There was a robbery looking van, and in the field there was a yellow American gun-shaped looking car, and basically that's all that's happened, apart from a couple of bird sounds saying pervert or stuff like that. Right, so about 20 minutes ago I managed to phone my dad, because obviously usually when I phone him he's always busy or tied up or doing things, so it's nice to get a catch up on that. But anyway, let's get back to these setups, shall we? So a flying creature says molested Sadie, a bird says pervert, a crow says you're a pervert, she's 35, no chance in living Helltop, Tesco van, and a pull boy van. Now the pull boy van is like a van that has conveyor belts, pulleys, straps and that type of thing to rip out tree stumps or to tow other vehicles. Also you had an Abri van, Dart oil van, shot dead you weirdo said, a car reverses at me, an animal says pee to go, dog barks jail just, dog sounds as to say 13, 13, but in an unusual way. Seagull says shot dead, ha ha ha, and then obviously you got a bike issue as well where they're timing the loud bike to erections. Right, so dog barks Satan, time to go. A girl is possessed to say molested me just, and a crow goes ha 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 just. Negative just barked by a dog. Right, so someone says fuck just, but they don't say it in like a nasty term. They're doing it to be comical or doing it for a laugh to imply that I need a fuck, basically. So they think that someone's going to fuck me. But anyway, the next threat's a little bit more sinister, and it's by somebody different, and they're saying he's a dead paedophile, and then they say being knifed, bad life, and that was said sarcastically, possibly from around the back of where the 2 bungalows are, as you go down the track near Barrack Graveyard. I mean, there's rough people behind there. I don't know what's behind there, but it's coming from that area. After that, someone in the car holds a fist at me. Then I'm being choked up by catalytic converter stench. Red car, a loud bike tying to an erection. As I go down that little bit of road where I mentioned there can be, where I said that there's only a maximum of 10 cars in one direction before, about 3 weeks ago, and now it's gone to 20, 30 or whatever. That bit of road there was 7 cars. At the roundabout it seems a little bit more interesting than usual, making the suggestion of haunted dolls, or haunted porcelain dolls that are spirited with or whatever. And then there was an A God van as one word, so I thought that's interesting. There was other suggestions at the roundabout, but it was all mild stuff. It wasn't really anything to state as such, and the cars were slightly out as well, so you didn't really have much in the way of suggestion there. I thought it'd be like black and blue and all the rest of it. It just seemed to be falling apart today on that roundabout, which is good, because I didn't have to put up with all the issues there. Then you had an orange mixed with white helicopter. Someone wearing a t-shirt saying Rapture Girls. I'm not sure if it's something religious or whether it's something different. I didn't really take much notice. And then after that, as I turn my head down to look at the road over the other side, there's a Biting Pencils van. Right, so just let me give you the setups of the last half hour here. Drains hit, red timed, car reverses at me, bonus bike, grey over drain, red car. Yeah, Saven, he's fucking dead, said. But that's not my name, but that person thinks I'm Saven like everybody else. Van reverses at me, trade team timed. That's a black trade team van, lorry, sorry. 2 black cars, robbery looking, black and blue, King's Group van, learner car, and then like a toff type of ugly looking face comes out at me, and then there's another face that looks identical near enough that spit talks at me. As I leave the Spar shop, Young's van, company purple van, so that says purple on the side of it, started car, evening paedophile said, cars reverse out of drive at me, one after the other, for about 5 cars, something like that, with the wind direction in my way by the way. A catalytic converter pulls up at me, which is a van, again with the wind direction at me. On the road ahead, a hearse is timed, then a Heaven van, then a cost cutter van, a wrist watch van, 2 deep van, that's the number 2 and the word deep, guarantee van, know-how van. And this is a bit that really pisses me off, because what happens next is while passing the circus area, I don't know if it's a circus or an event, but there's 2 people in the field making noises, having sex. I've accidentally deleted that recording of the orgasm noises or whatever, because I needed to redo this because I fucked the fucking recording up. So this is like a dark haired lady, a young lady, possibly a girl, but it's more likely to be a lady, having sex with someone just a little bit older. After that, I reached the road by there's 45 minutes or an hour, and there's 6 cars. On the dead end part, there's 1 car. Right, so you've had a blue sexual car timed. That's a light blue sexual car, by the way. Fucking flies. It will have to be replaced, written on the side of a van. That's not the van name, but there's small writing underneath whatever the van said, and I caught onto that, and I've written it down. A roofing van, a Sparks lorry, a pink car, a white car, and then there's a gun-looking American orange car, before a white car, a blue car, and FedEx van. Right, so walking down this track that I'm down now, there's been 3 people down this track wearing the same t-shirt, different colours or different versions of it, but it's a Jack Jones top, and also someone wearing like flames or fiery sort of clothing as well. What I also wanted to mention is I've had to turn the phone off, meaning that alright, hello, you sweet, aren't you?
I'm sorry.
That's alright. Yeah, so the reason I had to turn the phone off is because I'm very low on battery, so I need it to be put on, you see, about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, because obviously my mate Peter phones me up in the evenings, and if he's coming out to go into the garden this evening, I need to be prepared to walk back to do that. In actual fact, I might put it on a little bit earlier. It depends on the power. I might just switch it on here and there and see if there's any missed calls, because obviously I do like doing that. And also I see Peter as a really good friend. He's probably my best neighbour I've ever known, and I've known him for a long time now, a couple of years, and I don't really have anything bad to say about him, to be fair. Obviously he has his times, but everyone have their own times, you know. It could be part of mental health illnesses or whatever, but you know, he is a decent chap, so it would be nice to see him again in the garden, listen to a bit of music. But I will have to get some weaker drinks or some juice drinks to put some vodka in, because also I'm trying to cut down on that, though I will still have a couple of shots. But where I had that holiday with my brother and my mum, I got into like the habit of buying all these spirits again. I did this on the last holiday, and that's why I was drinking vodka in bloody 2022. But you know, family come first, you see, you know, and obviously when it comes to drinking, I've got to cut down on it. And I've only had 2 fags today as well. This time yesterday I think I had about 3 or 4, so let's just hope I don't smoke a load tonight. Right, so I've just made it to the road, and I've seen that person that wears the t-shirt that says "It's your lucky night." Well, on the back of that t-shirt, because I've never seen the back of that t-shirt before and never looked around to see what it says on the back, it has a circle with sex written in the side of it, very similar to the no sex symbol, which is like a signpost type of circle, which is in mixed colours of black, red and white. And that's occurred again. I saw her yesterday, but I didn't look at the back of the t-shirt, and going back a couple of weeks ago when all the sexual suggestions were being made, I didn't notice it then either. It's only today I've noticed it says sex on the back of that t-shirt. When it comes to the t-shirt that I saw earlier, the sex t-shirt, "It's your lucky night," I don't mind that going in my direction, because obviously it's a good suggestion, obviously. But the thing is, it's not something that's coming true, and you want it to come true. So when the suggestion's being made, you're thinking to yourself, a bit like a clairvoyant reading, you're thinking, oh, is there going to be something? Are they annoyed because there's going to be something for me and they're not happy about it, but I'm going to get someone? Well, I don't know. But anyway, I've got a few more things I need to mention, which has happened in the last 20 minutes. So I went to the furthest point where the closed off path is, where it goes on to West Coker after that. And I don't quite understand why they've done this, to be fair. It doesn't make sense, but they've put a no entry sign on the actual gate, which blocks the path off. Because obviously yesterday, you know, as I passed there, and it was just a sign that says that this pathway is now permanently closed, or something like that. But anyway, I just want to get to the section of the road part of walking there and the road part of walking back, because there has been some quite nasty, irritating setups that have occurred. Right, so you've had a Just Mint van, a car reverses at me, then there's like a light green car, a car reverses out of a drive, then I walk into a couple of unhappy people, but luckily I don't get any trouble. There's just a conversation that occurs. I couldn't quite make out what was being said, but it didn't sound very good. As I get to the next section, there's some workers doing some stuff on someone's house, and it's called, what was the bloody van name? Buckley or something. I can't remember what the name is now, because I haven't written it down, because it's one of the regular ones. Once you've written it down, it's not really that suggestive. But I think that's what it said. And then obviously got down the next part, and unfortunately someone was trying to sneeze in my face when I got down that track. And I think that's it before I reach the dead end part, or the new furthest point. Right, walking back, tying to an erection, there's a bike my way. A Bex van. That's not Bex as in BEX, that's BECZ. Then there's 2 cars that are started. I think it's 2 grey cars or something like that that went around on the road when I reached the next section. You had the Turner's tanker, and what happened then? I can't remember, but after that there wasn't really much in the way of setups before I got back onto the path that I'm walking on now. Right, so there's a couple of other things that occurred after the Turner's tanker, which was a CEF van, CEF, and another started car. Now obviously I've had to stop and write down the setups that have occurred, and I sort of remembered them a bit more clearly than when I was speaking into this digital audio recording device. Usually when I'm out and about, I've got a piece of paper in my hand 24/7 writing problems down every few seconds, but when I go to pleasant places like this, or where there's not many setups, or where it's not too built up, then sometimes I can put my paper in the pocket and I just write it down every now and again when so many setups have occurred, and that's why I've forgotten them. But obviously if it's important or something very suggestive, then obviously I will stop and I will write it down straight away. So I've reached the road. You know where I saw that orange gun looking car earlier? In exactly the same place and timed in exactly the same area, except on the other side of the road you've got that American orange gun looking car that needs to be timed, because God, or the creator God, or the elite, or the government want me fucking ripped to pieces, fucking hit off fucking big time. And then there's a red car after that. I've managed to get photographic evidence of that car. I've just had a look on my camera, but I've only got the back of the car, so when it goes on the picture frame of all the problems as setups, I do have the evidence, but I don't have the evidence of it being timed. Right, so I've gone to the dead end area, but then I decided to go back to have a sit down. There was no problems initially, but when I first went to the dead end part, there was a motorbike tying to an erection and a tractor with a bucket head coming down the dead end area of where I was about to walk down off onto the road at, which I'm re-walking now. And at the moment you've got an orange car, but let me just see, and a grey sexual car. And now that is coming down here, down the dead end part. How fucking typical, God. Hang on, I'll get the evidence, I'll keep it on filming. Recording, sorry. There we are. It happens all the time. I don't know how it's happening, how it's being controlled, but I tell you now, the creator's fucking warped. All the government are fucking just outright nasty, malicious bastards that want to take the piss out of me with all these setups. I've had to come off of the road, the 45-minute road, or where there can be an hour of no traffic at times, because they're getting nasty with the fucking setups. So initially, after the orange car came down my way and the grey sexual car timed, there was a bicycle tying to an erection, a 3-wheel bike tying to an erection, straight after. A black and blue car, then a knife-shaped car timed, followed by another knife-shaped car. After that, while actually reaching the road and going down the road just a little bit, a knife-shaped car in my direction. Then there's a sexual car, but it's an unusual type of sexual car. It's like a bodily designed, and it's taller than your average car. So it's more like a, well, not as high as a van, but gives that sort of symbolic or suggestion of a sexy, dark-haired lady in her teens or 20s or something like that, through suggestion, that is, if you want to use that interpretation. And then after that there was a 1940s gun looking car which looked more like a hearse, so it's sort of, the body of the car is sort of goes up both sides but goes outwards slightly as it increases to the top, and it sort of gives that sort of gravestone suggested look. I did try photographing it with my camera, but unfortunately the camera was playing up. In actual fact, because I'm not in a very happy mood, that camera nearly went smashed onto the floor. It's almost had its day anyway, that camera, but I managed to control myself just about. and then after that I inhale that. Right, so I've tried walking to the Spar shop because I wanted to get something like a juice drink or some fruit because I've got a bit of a sore throat, but it's a high cholesterol type of sore throat, if that's what you want to call it. And when you have those sorts of liquidy fruits or vitamins or whatever, it sometimes helps with it. But obviously I can't because they've closed the path off because the farmer's doing something on the path, so there's no chance of getting down there. No choice at all. So I'm going to have to put up with it. And now there's people coming from behind to push me onto the road. Right, the next thing I want to mention is there's an unusual sound coming from birds, which is like this. And it sounds almost identical to the drum and bass track released in 1994 on Formation Records from their Control EP release known as Mental Power. So the actual track is called Mental Power, Cool and Sexy on Formation Records, and it was released in 1994. The track is better known for Mental Power's Dream Sequence and also Mental Power's Unknown Intelligence, which is also from the same EP, which is titled the Control EP. Right, so for the last few minutes, obviously they're packing the traffic on that road where you can get 45 minutes or an hour without any traffic at all. And obviously on the roundabout ahead, 40 van or 40 something van, loads of black and blue time, that's right, green Alliance van. I need to write all this down. They're not gonna give up. They're finding their fucking mood again, aren't they, the government or the creative goddess, whatever's causing it. They just want to get fucking spiteful about it. There we are. Just fucking slam. What they're doing is they're slamming everyone's movement or controlling everyone's movement around me to be as busy, as hectic and as fucking annoying as possible to stir shit or to cause fucking trouble. They've been doing this since the middle of November or beginning of November 2024, just persistently, no matter where you fucking go. And then today they're really going for it, and I've noticed. It wasn't like this to start off with. Right, so now they're fucking hanging me with another fucking couple of 100 vehicles. 90% of every car is black and fucking blue, sexual, knife shaped, orange for some reason, and gun looking and whatever else. And also they're slamming bikes to erection, so you've got that 8 times loud bike to, well, 7 times loud bike to erection. And then obviously I'm coming onto this road now, which is the Barrack and Stovewood Road. Take into account before 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, whenever it was, the record breaking amount in one direction walking down this road is under 10. And now I've got the smell of vaping. And obviously, fucking hell. Yes, it's vaping, Christ. Vape. It's a vape. Woo, vape. Sexual vape, Christ. Fuck's sake. So there we are, we've hit 15 vehicles already. That's over record breaking amount before a month ago for one direction on this road, and it can be as high as 20 or 30 on some days, apart from when we had the sexual setups in that 3-day period, lingering on into like a 6-day period. I don't understand why that occurred, because obviously they made mistakes, or they were trying to twist it and claim this or claim that, or I was in the trap of somebody else of who they're setting this organised force up against. But like I said, today just seems to be outright fucking nasty. Anything from telling you you're not having sex to being ripped to fucking pieces and being fucking hit off and destroyed in your next fucking life and raped as a child again in your next life. They just will not fucking stop it. They're just being fucking pathetic potato heads. But they're billionaires if it's them that are causing it. If it's the elite or the government, all they care about is their fucking money. We don't give a fucking fuck if we slice people's wrists with the fucking creator god, destroy people, rape people, drink their blood, kill people, sacrifice them in blood rituals. They don't give a fucking damn. As long as they get their fucking money and their good life, they don't give a fuck. Right, so the final setup on that road is a brown gun looking car, but it's not fully gun looking, but the suggestion is there. And a brown car, and obviously there's a van that says the Alliance. Just Alliance, sorry, not the Alliance. I'm holding a CD actually. The CD I lean my sheet of paper on to write down problems, and I used to write on there, "Does anyone want friendship? I've been single all my life." But 7 years ago roughly, I stopped doing that, and I think that's where Lauren in Tesco's got the idea of finding out that I was single and made the suggestion that she wants sex with me. But like I said, before anything like that ever occurred, you had all enemies and force against me. Then the Savem threat came in, and eventually she found someone, and it was too late. And obviously she doesn't like me today, and she's a single mother of 2 children, possibly more. Anyway, the CD case as it stands today says The Alliance, First Impressions, on Reinforced Records. It was released on a record called Enforcer 6 from Reinforced Records in 1994. Prior to that, it was on Legend Records as a promo release known as The Alliance, First Impressions on Legend Records, which was released in 1993. The second part of The Alliance, First Impressions, features a sample that's also in a track called Way Out West, The Gift, and I believe the dark, eerie intro that goes on for a minute or whatever is samples taken from Kate Bush, but slowed down. But I can't remember the album it's taken from, but it's one of her more sophisticated albums rather than her singing type of albums. So to give you more details on that track, is early drum and bass, jungle maybe. It starts off with like an eerie sound that sounds like a dark cellar, with bats flying around, and then obviously the drums kick in a specific way, and then you get the bumpy bass patterns, and then it goes on like that until you go into the next section of the track, which is where you've got the sample that sounds like it's from Way Out West, The Gift, which is a more commercial track, which was released in 1996 or late 1995. The Alliance First Impressions is not actually that commercial. It is in between. It was played at Dreamscape 8, New Year's Eve 1993. It's on the Groove Rider mix tape, and it's also on other mixes as well. I think it's Total Chaos by LTJ Bookham, going back to 1993, and it's probably been played at other places here and there, and at other rave events as well. So it's one of those tracks where it's in between, so it's not commercial, but it's not extremely rare underground stuff either. It's sort of in the middle, but it does give that sort of rare groove sound, even though it's not as rare as the actual sound of the music suggests. It is quite a big track. It was in its day, probably not anymore. Today it would be seen as a track that's very rare and no longer available, but back in its time it would have been quite a big track, especially in the underground scene, definitely. A dog has just barked in a way just as if to say, "You're fucking sick, fucking spastic," but as if like someone shouting. It's changed now. I might keep what's that? Unless it really was a person, but that's a female, not. Anyway, the last 20 minutes I've just been walking around the graveyard, not doing much. I'm wasting a bit of time until later. So there's been 4 gun looking vehicles while looking over to the road, timed at times that I'm walking about. This is not in order, this is random. And also a funeral car and a funeral looking car, and obviously there's been a few other cars like black and blue, sick white or whatever in the mints. Someone's just had a go at me saying you don't work or anything like that. I didn't want to start an argument or anything like that with them because I'm already pissed off today, so I thought I'd just say, well, I don't work because I've got mental disabilities and that sort of thing. Mind you, I didn't tell them this, but I have attempted or tried work in the past, and it just falls all over the place. One of the earliest jobs that I attempted on a trial basis, in the first 2 hours I was at the workplace, not knowing what I was doing. This is like a before you did the proper job sort of thing. This is like an introduction or a sample basically. And within the first 2 hours of working there, the police had to be called because everybody in the workplace was starting on me. This goes back many years ago. This is way before the Survivor or anything like that. You're looking at 2005, I think it is, or that sort of time period, 2006, when I first moved to Bridgewater. But then I sort of gave up because of all the problems I was getting there. And then there's another trial job I did later on, which resulted in another issue. Again, where the police had to be called, and that was, again, it was in the first couple of hours, if that, of trying to do that job as well. So it's been a bit like that. And also, you've got to take into account that when I've attempted these jobs in the past, you've got these controlled setups, like these setups that have been occurring today, and they don't stop it. Even if you're in a workplace or anything like that, they just go for gold. They just want to rip you to pieces, or if it's not caused by the government or the elite, then it's caused by God trying to rip you to pieces. No matter what you do, where you go, what it is you do, whether it's working, whether it's staying at home, they got this action against you like a piece of shit regardless, and it's there all the time. Even when I got arrested and went to a magistrate's court and been to the police station in the past, and not only at these types of places like trying to work or going to the police station or whatever, they step up the action at these times and make it much nastier and get nastier about it. I mean a lot nastier. So this is never going to stop. I mean, I don't mind doing voluntary work, helping out, but it's not going to be, I'm not going to be able to do it in like a way where you're restricted to certain times, where you've got to be there at certain times and leave at certain times. You've got to do it on the basis of, you can't guarantee you can get there, or you can't guarantee this, you can't guarantee that. And you've also got to take into account that when you do these sorts of things, they're also timing nasty people, threats, or incidents to almost occur when you go to these sorts of places to attempt work or stuff like that, especially in the past. And this is before the setups worsened after the lockdown. I mean, the setups have never been nice at all. There was just a little bit of relief in the 2019 area, where you had that 1 year just before we went into the lockdown, where they were saying you paid the price for sexual sins. But the problem is, the sexual sins they were accusing me for, that they're claiming I've paid the price for, are sins that never took place. The only thing that I did that was wrong, which they said you paid the price for, in the suggestion of these setups, when the setup started to die out in that year, was the graffiti I did, which was Bomb Hinkley Point power station, which I did in some Christmas spray or whatever it was I did many years ago, which I did get in trouble with by the police. But the police were more concerned about my safety, and I took what they said into account seriously, because obviously they were more concerned about things that could happen to me if I write it than me getting arrested, and they just didn't want to see me get hurt or anything like that, or you know, whatever. So they did warn me of that back at that time period, and this goes back to 2006 area. But at the same time, when this occurred, there were a lot of bad things that happened, including stuff going missing from my place. The aggression of threats was really nasty. People were trying to attack me. The setups were heavy. You had the whole lot at you. And although I'm more withstandable to these problems today and can put up with it a little bit more than I did back in those days, you know, I was not happy. But and that's the reason I did that, due to all the shouting and threats. I mean, there was a lot more in the way of shouting back then, which you don't get as much now. You get threats, but it was a lot worse. So when it comes to the shouting, or the shouty type threats, like dog hollering barks or whatever, back then, to what it is since I moved to Yeovil. However, in the early days of moving to Yeovil, it wasn't very good. It was more like Bridgewater back in that sort of time period. But that's sort of calmed down a little bit. This year in particular, there's been probably about 3 months now where threats have been basically no threats near enough. There's just a little time period where threats started to kick off a little bit, which is 2 weeks ago for a short period of time. And when I went to the Tesco store in the evening, I think it's about a week or so ago, where a load of people started on me, mistaking me as Savannah in there. Otherwise, apart from that, there's been pretty much a lot calmer. But there's also been a few incidents where people tried to attack me, or they got ready to attack me mistaking me as that person named Saven. Just like in the past, there's been very few people that have actually wanted to meet up on a dating site, and all the ones that have go back in the earliest of days when I was using dating online, which is meeting up, but every time I met up with, where it's only a couple, they wave, and I'd find out that the picture that they're using on their profile on the dating site is totally different, and they look too ugly. So when this has occurred, I've not even got off of the bus. I seen who it is, they waved, and they tried calling me to come off the bus, but obviously because they don't know me and don't know what they look like, but you can work out who it is, you know, I never got off the bus. But anyone that's sort of sexual looking or basic looking, they've caused road closures. When I've gone to say I'm going to meet up in a shop, they've closed the shop on that specific day, or the government have caused an event to take place where everything has to be shut on a specific day, or something like that. And you just have many different things like that. And also there's been times where I've not been able to leave my place because people have been outside waiting to attack me because of the shit stirring that was going on back in the old days. So you've had that as well, so that's basically stopped me getting anything. And even one clairvoyant prediction was very interesting, because she said I was going to get a partner for the first time in my life, and she predicted the name Chloe. This is one of the ones I can remember a bit more clearer than most other psychic readings I've had. So she said you have to go towards North Peverton on North Peverton Carnival night, I think it's 2011, to make this happen. And she said you kind of know who this person is, but you're going to bump into her on Carnival night, but you've got to go to North Peverton to visit your dad's, basically, for this to take place, and she's going to get in a relationship with you. So at the time she would have been about 18, something like that, and she was similar looking to Gemma Ferguson, but smoother skin and younger appearance. But obviously when that evening came, there was no such thing as North Peverton Carnival, because they took it off because there was a fuel explosion on the M5 motorway. So the nearest actual person a clairvoyant has predicted that's come close is Heather, and that was at Burnham-on-Sea. But at the time I walked out the shop into Ernley, which is exactly what the psychic said, and it was unexpected because it was on a day where I didn't expect it. And what happens, it's in the time period of when the Saven threat came in, and these two people knew this Heather, and they were starting on me as they were talking to Heather. So, but that is the nearest when it comes to clairvoyant predicting girlfriends is concerned. The latest proper clairvoyant reading I had goes back quite a few months ago. I can't remember when it is now. I mean, I did a phone call on the other day, and they said there's a girlfriend that's just around the corner, which shocked me, to be fair. That's probably why they've stepped up all these evil malicious setups, because they don't want me to have anyone, whether it's caused by God or whether it's caused by the government or whoever. Whatever's causing it, don't want me to have anyone, so they organise this force around me in a fucked up way where it's outright nasty and outright malice, and it's 24/7. It's been going on for many years. I didn't really notice it back in the 90s, but I think it's around 1997 when I picked up on all this, but I thought it was coincidence right up until about 2005. But when it came to the media and music industry and stuff like that, and having the TV industry twisted against you, it was around about 2002, 2003 I noticed that things were going on. But obviously there was no confirmation of it being caused, and back at that time I thought it's God causing it. But knowing that the elite have power, and I had no idea who the elite was back in 2003. I didn't even know what the Matrix was in 2003. I mean, if I watched a bit of the Matrix film, but I didn't understand it, because I didn't know about, you know, all the you know, the material world and the non-material world. Today it's a lot more obvious, and I understand, and it makes more sense. It's more clear to understand. But back then I just thought it was one solid creation, you know, like that. So I wasn't as intellectual back then, and other people weren't as intellectual either, because you didn't have the internet as such back then very well. and it's only the rich that had the internet, if the internet existed, that is, because I don't know when it came in. But I know it's been around for a while, so fuck knows. But so that's that. Right, I've not had many clairvoyant readings in recent times. Usually by this time of the year, say April, going back say several years ago or whatever, I would have had about 5 or 6 readings, because I was getting into all this spiritual stuff and all the rest of it, but I've started to sort of go out of it in the last about a year and a bit, because obviously readings not coming true. But the problem is, there's also been a lot of stuff that has come true that the psychics have said. Anyway, let's go to the latest ones. In actual fact, I can't remember what the earliest one was, whether it's late last year or the beginning of this year. I thought it was last year, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I think this is the one that predicted me a girlfriend called Julia. But that fell through. That never existed. That never came to be. And I was, oh yeah, it's last year, because she said it was going to be by Christmas. Yeah, she got that wrong. As far as the other bits in the reading, you know, other bits and pieces that she gave in the reading was concerned, she was 80% right. There was a couple of things that she got wrong, but not many things. I can't remember what the things were now, but I do remember mentioning or saying it's around about 80% she was right. So it was good in one sense, so she did get some things right. And there's a few things that I mentioned which she would have no knowledge of, which she wouldn't just ask, you know. It's sort of things, how do I word it, things that is not your regular things that you could tell anybody else, try and feed off of people or whatever. These are things that are detailed. There's a couple of things that she mentioned that are detailed, which was specifically what only I would have, that nobody else would have, sort of thing, if you get what I'm saying. So she couldn't link or work on or read on people in a way where you could give anyone a sort of same reading and the same thing sort of happens for everybody else, sort of thing. It was a little bit more detailed, and there's a couple of things that came true there which would not be applicable to other people, which was interesting. But like I said, the Julia that she said that was going to come into my life that didn't ever exist, she also made it sound like it's going to be someone that's going to be that you're going to be helped by this person, or there's going to be a connection, or it's going to be done by sort of not an organisation as such, but through people rather than on the internet or meeting up or whatever. It's going to be more like a connection that's going to be caused for you to meet up with this person that's named Julia. But nothing came of it. But like I said, it's only a reading, and as I said the other day, it could be demons where the psychics are getting this information from. And I will mention something else. Since I moved to the road and sat on the bench on the other side, they're increasing the traffic on that road, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to choke me out with a catalytic converter, and that's why they're making that road busy. They do it every time I move on this bench. It's like they got your mind controlled. They know what you're doing, whether it's caused by God or whether it's caused by the government or the elite. No matter what you do, this force is fixed around you, like they got noetic science technology to know in advance and to program everyone's movement around me in a buckled or way to cause trouble. Anyway, just a few days ago I had a phone reading. So what happened was, I got drunk because I had 3/4 of a bottle of neat vodka, 37.5%, and that's a 1 litre bottle. And it's one of the naughtiest drinking evenings I've had. And obviously I got a bit overexcited and decided to go and look for a clairvoyant online, as it popped into my head, or something on the internet caused me to think that. So I decided to look for a clairvoyant to pay. So how it worked is, you make the payment, you email the details, not email, sorry. Well, you can email it, but I did it, because I was pissed, I did it through the message box and the photo thing that is actually on her own page, if you get what I'm saying. I can't remember what her surname is because I was a bit pissed, but I do remember the first name of this old lady that gave me the reading. So her name is Phoebe. So I did all the stuff on her site, gave her my phone number to contact me, and then obviously she texted me, she gave me a time slot, and then obviously she gave me the reading. She's quite a friendly, polite lady. She did say that I was very low in spirits, and she did say she senses health problems and thinks that I need to freshen up with a better diet and stuff like that. But she didn't actually pick up on me or mention smoking or drinking or anything like that. But you knew that she was getting the information right. She didn't really go into much when it comes to the more serious stuff, and she kind of in some ways gave that sort of reading that you could give anybody, really. Unlike the clairvoyant I saw last year who predicted Julia, who said specific things that would only be irrelevant to yourself, rather than being like someone trying to just work on someone, what they think of that person and that sort of thing. So these were detailed things, but unfortunately when it came to this Julia that was predicted, nothing existed, nothing came out of it. Anyway, the clairvoyant I spoke to on the phone the other day is claiming that there is someone coming into my life, and said that it's someone I'm going to fancy, someone that I like, and obviously she made it sound like it's going to be someone that's not a single mother, which is what I want, because I don't want a single mother. Why should I be forced to go with someone else's mistakes? Why should I go with a stale piece of dirt that's fucked hundreds of people or thousands of people and give me the leftovers when I've not had nothing in my whole life, and being 43 years of age, coming up 44, it's not good, is it? But anyway, what she said was a bit more positive than that, so she made it sound like it's going to be someone that's healthy, someone that's clean, someone that's good looking. So I'm looking forward to it, but obviously I don't have any hope. Out of all clairvoyant readings, I've lost hope in all this, so I'm not actually getting any sort of excitement or thrill from it, because I can't guarantee it's going to happen, you see, because they've been wrong in the past. However, if it does come true, she said it's just around the corner. She said quite literally now. So that could mean today, tomorrow, next week, 3 weeks' time, possibly no more longer than maybe a month or two. So just around the corner means it's imminent, and that's basically what she told me. So who this is going to be, I haven't got a clue, but just supposing she's right, I will be shocked. Anyway, it was interesting that she picked up on the health problems anyway. I'm not going to go into too much of a story about it because I've already mentioned it, but many times I've had these clairvoyant readings, these setups turn spiteful or nasty straight after I walk out of the chair of wherever it is I'm having the readings. So for example, if I go to Glastonbury, as soon as I walk back out of the shop, what they do is they time an air shower in loud bike tying to an erection, an overhanging trailer tying to rip my legs off, wording on vehicles to say we're going to rip you to pieces, timing people to sneeze in my face, causing threats, trying to smash cars into me, timing gun looking suggestions or to hit you off sort of suggestions, or making suggestions that we're going to sexually rip you to pieces in your next life, or that we're tearing you to pieces in every life, and even setups to say that we're going to slice your wrists with the Creator God and tear you apart, while cheering about it at the same time when they do these suggestions. So there's not been much in the way of trying to throw me off course at the moment, but you just have to wait and see. I don't know if it's going to come true or not. I mean, every other reading that I've had in my life, I've had some form of hope, or it's made me feel a bit better hearing that there's a possibility that there's going to be a girlfriend. But on this reading, I have no hope whatsoever. If it comes true, it comes true. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm just going to enjoy my life the best I can, like having my drink in the evening and smoking. But I need to cut down on that, especially on the smoking. Drinking I can sort of get to grips with later, but the smoking is a bit more serious at the moment when it comes to what I'm doing. Right, so it's 5:55 PM and we've had Seacross says shot dead, seen by birds and crows repeatedly. A girl says fuck da, and then a bird tweets woo Justin. After about 15 minutes, tingling bell ends at a 7 times loud bite time to a sudden shooting erection, and then basically it's been that since from that, well, whatever the time was to whatever the time is now at 5:55 p.m. I've noticed the time's dragging this evening, so I'm a little bit annoyed by that because I'm getting a little bit bored. So you've still got a couple of hours before I start my drinking. However, the likelihood is Peter will ring me up about 8 o'clock or whatever, like he did last night or whatever, and I shall pop back and, you know, sit in the garden with him because I really enjoy doing that. Yeah, so, and that's something else, I will mention that while I got it in my head. I've changed my drinking time. My drinking time used to be somewhere between 10:30 and 11:30 p.m. at night, which is very late. When I was on the lager, that was. But since I've got back from holiday, being at my mum's and seeing my brother or whatever, and having loads of shots of Sambuca, and also the fact that I've been going to the 94 Club, or clubbing around Yeovil or whatever, going to different bars or whatever, my drinking time has actually changed now. So I sort of drink in the late evening, so it's roughly somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock as a rule. But I might give you a bit of history actually about the times I used to drink. So initially, when I had my very first lager, it was Foster's at Weston-super-Mare. So I was with my Uncle Rob in the car, and I tried it, and I couldn't get on with it, I just didn't like it. And then obviously I got into lagers, but mostly into the cider though. So the first time I got into White Lightning was by Rosalind. She bought a big bottle of it once, and I tried a bit, and I really loved it, and I bought it myself. I just absolutely loved it. It tastes like a really nice drink, and I got into it that way. This goes back many years, mind. I still like it today, but I just don't drink it much. Well, I don't drink cider at all, hardly, to be fair. So it's mostly beer, but in recent times I've been drinking a lot of spirits, especially in the last 10 years. Mostly doing shots on holiday, when going on holiday with my mum and my brother or whatever. I've had loads of shots, and sometimes when you do that, you don't feel the effects of the beer. And when I got back, especially since I moved to Yeovil, Thorn House, I've been buying these, you know, these, you know, spirits and Jägermeister and stuff like that, sometimes gin. Anyway, let's give you some idea of the times of when I started to sort of drink for the day, starting going back in the early days of when I was living, you know, before I moved to North Peverton. I'll give you the days before that. So basically it's drinking basically from start of the day, so after about midday usually I'd be having a drink, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. But there were times where I didn't really get up until very late because I was staying up all night back in that time period. So there wouldn't be times really where I'd be drinking sometimes till 4 o'clock, but I see that as like a daytime drink. So that all came to an end after I had the bottles of Diamond White cider in the day. I think it was either in the first week I first moved to North Peverton. So this is like 2000 area, the year 2000, something like that. Maybe 2001, I can't remember the year now. Initially I sort of was drinking, I was allowed to drink, so I went into the stronger beer. So I had these special brews which are 9%, so I had 3 of those a night, and my average drinking time was 6:30, and I moved it along to 7 o'clock after a time, and it was just like that sort of time period basically right through until I ended up going into this what you call it, mental hospital for psychiatric care, whatever you want to call it, for 6 months. You weren't allowed to drink in there, so I had a bit of time off of drinking, though I did have 2 sneaky hooches on one specific day while I was there. When I left there, I moved to Southbourne House in Bridgewater, and I had a new drinking time and a new way of life. So the first week I moved to Bridgewater, my drinking time was 8 o'clock, and I was initially drinking Stella, so it was a bit weaker rather than the 9% stuff. And then eventually I went on to the special brew again, and when I did do that, I started going to later times when I was drinking. But I did drink a lot, and I did get drinks when I was out, and there's times where I went to the chip shop down St John Street, which is an Indian place, where I ordered something and I didn't have the money on me at the time, and it happened several occasions. I don't know what happened, where's the money gone? And it turns out that I didn't pick it up, or I didn't realise, or whatever, and that's what happened there. Anyway, these walks stopped because people were starting on me and I was getting a lot of problems, and I started staying in drinking. And because I was staying in and not going out or whatever, my drinking time changed to 10 o'clock. I think I went straight to 10 o'clock if I remember. I mean, there might have been some times where I was drinking a bit earlier, but I don't think that was the case. I think I went straight from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And I was drinking at 10 o'clock for a long, long time, and going to bed any time, hopefully before the Palace nightclub closes at 3:30 in the morning. However, there were occasions where that was not the case. So we move on a little bit further, say 2007, the drinking time changed again to 11 o'clock or 11:30, and then basically it's been in that time period right through from 2006 possibly, but likely to be 2007, right through until 2025, which is now. So what's happened now is I went on holiday with my mum and my brother, just come back several weeks ago, and I've noticed that my drinking time has changed to the time that I started drinking when I was on holiday with my brother and my mother. And it appears that most days I drink, because I'm drinking vodka and other spirits now rather than beer, that I'm drinking a lot earlier than 11:30. So that's been good, because even Peter, you know, it's helpful for him when he's sitting in the garden having a drink, because obviously he prefers to drink at an earlier time as well, so that comes in really convenient, to be fair. Anyway, I'm going to take a seat a minute. So what we do now, oh god, right, so all the trouble's fucking kicking off straight after Peter phoned me. Someone outside or people around the area where I am are just saying stuff like, "You're being fucking knife dead, Justin, you're being fucking knife dead, you're a fucking rapist, you're a paedophile." And some people are mistaking me as saying, "You're being fucking shot down, sick, I'm being fucking shot down." And obviously they timed a few loud bikes tying to an erection. Anyway, now I've got past that, I want to mention the phone call, because obviously Peter phoned me a few minutes ago. Right, so what's happened is, incidentally, I did manage to complete all the information that I wanted to mention on the previous recording just before the phone rang, where I had to answer it. Anyway, it was Peter on the phone, as I just said, which is coincidence, because he was actually talking about changing his drinking time, which is basically what I was mentioning on my video, which is quite a coincidence, quite a laugh, quite an unusual thing to happen at the same time, but obviously if you're friends you're probably thinking the same way. But yeah, so if we go back 6 weeks ago or before, my average drinking time was 11:30, but I could be flexible to about 9 o'clock at an early time if I wanted it to go to a bar or have a drink out with Peter, or go by myself at the weekend to, say, the 94 Club or Barolo Lounge or whatever. Obviously I start a little bit earlier now because I'm drinking vodka, which is stronger, but then again, even when we go back 6 weeks ago, although my drinking time's 11:30, quite a lot in recent months I have been going to the time of 10:30. so it has been changing for a while now. There are still some nights where it's 11:30, but I have noticed that I've dropped an hour, even prior to my new drinking time that is taking place now. So my new drinking time now is between 8 and 9, and obviously I start off with a couple of shots of vodka. How it's going to affect me when the sort of daylight remains sunny or whatever, or later on, and say in a couple of months when it's still daylight at that time, I haven't decided what I'm going to do when it comes to the drinking yet, because obviously I'm more of a sort of person that sort of prefers the dark period of the evening when I start my drinking. As it stands, since I come back from holiday, staying at my mum's and visiting my brother or whatever, obviously the average drinking time was sort of 8:30, 9, I can't remember what time it was in the time period when I was visiting my mum's. So obviously since I've been back, I've been on the spirits again, so I drink somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock at night, so I'm being a lot more flexible than I used to be, and this is why I've been going in the communal garden seeing Peter, because obviously I'm drinking at a more sensible time when he's drinking. But on the phone call I've had this evening, he wants to change his time again. He prefers to be I couldn't really he said he basically, as long what was it he said, 5 o'clock onwards basically, he sort of wants to start at an earlier time. So I don't mind being flexible in times of when I start my alcoholic drinking, but his new time is a little bit too early for my liking when I want to start drinking. However, I don't mind having a glass of orange or something like that if I was to sit in the garden with him, having a conversation or listening to music or whatever. The earliest possible time I'd drink would probably be about 7:30, but obviously it would have to be like a night where you're going to really sort of drink slow, but at the same time drink a lot to enjoy the evening. So for example, you go on holiday, 7:30 would be the average drinking time anyway of when you'd go to a bar or whatever. So me, my brother, and obviously my mum comes along, but she doesn't drink. I've been on quite a few holidays over the last decade, and the average time is usually about 7:30 onwards when we sort of make progression to go to an evening place to have a drink, like a bar or a place like Hollywood Bowl, that's or wherever it is, when you're going on holiday sort of thing. But 7:30, anything before 7:30 I can't be flexible with. I'm just not an early type of drinker. I mean, it was okay back in 2001 to 2003 area, or whatever time period it was, because I was drinking 6:30, maybe 7 o'clock, which is the sort of time Peter wants to drink now. Maybe just a bit earlier than that, I'm not sure. I think he made it sound like it's a sort of 5 o'clock onwards, so I'm not exactly sure. I need to speak to him to see what the exact time is of when he wants to start drinking. But when he phoned me up, it was 6:20 p.m, and he said he's in the garden now drinking, so there's a possibility that he wants to start drinking while the sunny weather's out and you can see the sunlight going into sunset or whatever. So I'm going to have a word with him. I don't want to be disrespectful and change his drinking time or anything like that, but we'll just have to see how flexible we can be, or make an agreement to sort of be out at the same time where we can drink together sort of thing. So I'm not sure how I'm going to work that yet. But anyway, let's just let him enjoy himself in the garden tonight, because obviously there's no way I'm going to get back in time to drink at the time that he's drinking tonight. And obviously it's now probably, I don't know how long ago it is now since he came off the phone, but because I've done this recording so many times, and I keep messing it up. But anyway, I'll leave it there on that subject, and I'll give you more details on this issue at a later time, maybe tomorrow or something. Again, the threats are coming from the same area as mentioned earlier, so there's like a track that goes down through the graveyard at Barrack and goes to the back of the 2 bungalows. It's somewhere at the back of there, or in that area. That's where all this you know, what I just mentioned, this seems to be coming from, you know, the sort of, I'm gonna knife you, I'm gonna fucking break you, I'm gonna inject who you are, you know, all that sort of shit. Now I've got robbery threats where robbery said, usually when things like that happen, it results in people having smashed windows, slashed tyres and fucking windows put through and everything like that. And even in some cases, if you go into the cities, they end up fucking knifing you or whatever. Anyway, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the bad experiences I've had through my time. Right, so it starts off, I mentioned this the other day by the way on another recording, but I just want to give you a brief intro of the unlucky incidents that have occurred basically since I left Bridgewater when I was living at West Street. Right, so initially when I moved from there, I left one of the most important boxes behind that I was supposed to take, and when I moved all the other stuff to my new place, I forgot I left that box behind. Hard drives, CDs, music, you had many different things in that one box, and a couple of sentimental things as well. But unfortunately, when I contacted the council, it was too late. The box had already gone. The next incident that occurred was when I was living at Burnham-on-Sea. So I left the window open because it was a hot sunny day, and although they didn't take the computer, which shocked me, they took other expensive bits and pieces that they chose to take when they climbed through the window at the time I was out, possibly walking the beach on that specific day, because I couldn't stay there because it was boiling hot and sunny and I was getting pissed off of it, and obviously I forgot to shut the window. Right, so the next incident is where I had several £1,000s worth of stuff. So there was 6 boxes in the bike shed and half a bag of clothes, possibly in a rubble sack, which was ready to be picked up for me to move into Yeovil back in 2021. Well, I was camping that specific night because I was getting eye problems at my place due to whatever the neighbour was using. And when the social worker went to pick me up the following day, they broke into the bike shed and they stole thousands of pounds of my stuff. So those 6 boxes and bag of clothes I couldn't take. The next incident is when I rented a garage in 2023 because I was getting concerned of people wanting to break in at my place, and I put nearly everything that I own in that garage. In April 2024 it got broken into and I lost everything. Music, blank discs, you name it, the whole fucking lot. And it got even better because in that time period all the threats were on the increase. The aggression, the violence, and people shouting at me and getting ready to smash me or whatever, or attempting to attack me, went off the scale. And also there were strange animal voice sounds coming out in a corrupt way, which was also increasing. You also had the loud bike time to erection increasing, and you also had many other problems that were increasing, like the control of setups digging at you like a piece of shit, like they always do, like I've mentioned throughout this recording today. And obviously you've had incidents where money's gone missing from my apartment. So I had £1,000 money pack which I hid, and I had another one which is a £500 one because I had the other one I thought was secure. I thought it was secure. So what happened is I didn't notice that the £1,000 money pack went missing, and I needed another £500 money pack for emergency money, and that went missing. But I discovered that one going missing first before the £1,000 when I went to look for the £1,000 one. So obviously I stopped keeping money in my flat, and also at the same time you've got to take into account I'm on lower money now, but the money was saved up for me to move up my old place to that place. So that's what the initial money was for, but they were separate packs. And then obviously, just in case I lost my debit card and I didn't have any money on me, I thought I need to keep some sort of spare money just in case there's an emergency. So I did a £250 money pack. I hid that somewhere safe. What happened? Chrysalis Housing or workers needed to do something, and obviously I didn't expect them to go there, and it got nicked. Now obviously this bit I'm going to mention now wasn't done on purpose. Helen, who's one of the staff at Supported Housing, wanted to call my place down in April 2022, and she didn't realise that my records were laying against the radiator. So it's like all this old school jungle 1993 and 1994 stuff, the rare stuff, you know, the underground stuff. Well, she accidentally turned the heating on instead of turning it off, and didn't know how to work the thing properly. It buggered up a lot of money in records, and that today has not tripled in price, but you're looking about nearly 10 times the cost of what it cost when I bought it back in 2018 and 2019. So I definitely won't be buying anything like that anymore. And you've got to take into account my money situation at the moment. If you really want to know what's in my bank account, then there's only enough to see me through to buy my alcohol and pay the bills and get my food. No money for luxuries, nothing like that. That is how low my account is now. And the other thing I want to mention is, not only has that occurred, but I've lost music that I've recorded. This is separate to things going missing or whatever, but when I was pissed in 2022, and it happened again when I had to move a bag so that workers could do something towards the boiler area in the kitchen, I made it look like it's a rubbish bag when I put my CDs and that in there. I got pissed one night because I was on the vodka, gin and Jägermeister, and I chucked the wrong bag out. And then after, I must have moved it accidentally, or moved it out of the way to do something, and I moved the wrong bag and I moved it in the wrong area next to the other rubbish bag. So what happened is I probably picked up the wrong bag and ended up chucking my recorded discs, all my old school jungle tracks, which were on M-Disc at the time. So obviously I've had some very unfortunate things happen, and obviously in general, whatever causes the eye problem or the burning problem, both at my old place and now with the eye problem at this place as well, so you've got the burning problem and the eye problem both at my old place and now this place, it's doing something to the layer of the discs and it's fucking up all my CDs. So all those dark ambient discs that I was buying when I was camping before I moved from my old place to where I am now, all had to be chucked. 32 CDs, roughly 1,400 quid. Dark ambient, because I changed my style of music. I was in a very bad mood. And I sort of got into, it might be less than that I paid actually. In today's money it'd be that easy. Anyway, they had to be chucked. And also, whatever's causing the eye problem or the burning is also wiping off hard drives and USB sticks. So I had to wrap my hard drives up in foil to avoid losing any data. So that's another thing that occurs both at my old place, and obviously it's occurring now in Yeovil since the last day of January 2024. So apart from that, I pretty much have nothing. Obviously I built a few things back, like I've rebought some blank discs, you know, the M-Discs, but the problem is they're discontinued, and I'm starting to prefer electronic storage devices rather than discs, because the disc technology is sort of dying out now. And obviously in the next 10 years you probably won't have discs at all because everyone download it. So you're going to see an end to all that. So I don't have many tracks. I did this on a documentary going back, I can't remember, I think it's the day before yesterday. I think it's when I was mentioning the clairvoyant reading, where I was mentioning these problems. If you want to know more or anything like that, just go back on my YouTube video. I think it's not the one I uploaded yesterday, but the one I uploaded the day before, and it will have more information on what I'm telling you on this documentary now. Save me going for it. There's not many other things I need to mention, but it gives you more in detail when it comes to this issue. I just wanted to mention that there has been people that have asked me have I ever had a robbery or stuff like that. Well, I don't like the description of that. I'd prefer to say stuff going missing, because if you look at the amount of stuff that's gone missing and the way it's happened, it'd be the equivalent to quite a few robberies if you were to break into someone's home. So that would be a better wording to use. And yes, I have been very unfortunate when it comes to these types of things. There's been quite a few incidents where stuff's gone missing, so you know, and some of it's not replaceable, you know, especially when it comes to music or family documentation or family photos or whatever. So but nowadays I don't really have much in the way of material objects due to that reason, and a lot of the stuff that I have is stored on hard drives or USB sticks, except I have to wrap it in foil because these devices that are causing the burning problem or eye problem seem to be wiping off the data off of these devices, and since I've been putting the foil over them, the data's been remaining safe for the last year. When it comes to discs, it messes up discs, but it takes a bit more time and it has to be done over a course of a period of time. However, I don't understand what messed up all those cryo chamber CD discs so quickly back in the time period of when this burning problem initially started on the last day of January 2024 into the first few days of February 2024, before I had to stay at my dad's, and that's when obviously I found out that the discs are not playable and I lost all that money that I paid for those 32 cryo chamber discs full of dark ambient. Again, this is something that's on a YouTube video that's on YouTube already, so it's going to be not the previous video to this, but the one before that, or the one that's got the information of a clairvoyant reading and the day's problems, which I think is dated the 7th of the 4th 2025. So that's the one you need to check out if you want more details of this information. Earlier on I was mentioning the flexibility of changing my drinking times to be more adaptable to the needs of other people's drinking times, and you know, starting to change in that way to make things a bit more simple for everybody, or vice versa. I will mention something. June and July are very irritating months when it comes to drinking alcohol. I've always been a sort of drinker, except for when I was a teenager, obviously. I sort of prefer to drink at a time when it sort of starts to get dark in the evening, so anything from sundown onwards or whatever is a nice time, or a time I can be adaptable to when it comes to drinking, alternatively to the set times that I was mentioning earlier on. One other thing I want to mention regarding what I just mentioned is, just supposing I was on holiday and we did drink a bit earlier, or if it's not earlier, you know, within daylight hours, I still wouldn't be happy about drinking in the daytime, but I would be flexible to drinking, say, 20 minutes, half an hour before sunset, drinking into the evening. However, I'm also not a type that likes to finish, so what I mean by that is, if I drink in the evenings, I drink right through until, bedtime, or if not bedtime, until very late in the evening. Obviously you might be sober by the time that occurs when you're back home or whatever, or at the time you finish drinking if you're at home. But I'm just not one of those types of people that's a day drinker. I'm more of an evening drinker. I always have been, really, apart from my early days of when I was about the age of 15, down in 3-litre bottles of cider or 2-litre bottles of cider or whatever. Back to the alcoholic drinking issue. You may ask, what time would I finish drinking if I was late finishing drinking? So, it wouldn't bother me if it was daylight if I finished drinking, because obviously I've finished drinking many times when it's daylight. However, I would not be happy if I stayed awake all night after drinking and started the day's activities the same morning without going to bed on the same day if I was to stay awake all night after drinking. I'd have to have a few hours sleep at least before I start my day, because I'm just not that type of person that is like that. And the final thing I want to mention is, what is the latest time I'd start my drinking? Well, the latest time would probably be midnight, and it always has been about that time, even when I started at 11:30. And the latest I've been known to start drinking is actually 6 o'clock in the morning, but that's only on one occasion. Otherwise, prior to that, the latest I've ever started drinking is 2:30 in the morning. I think there might have been a time where there's a second time where it's just after that time as well, but I can't remember. When I say that, that's under normal circumstances. But for example, if I've been in bed with a hangover all day, or feel really crap and don't get out of bed until 11:30 at night, then obviously I do change the time slightly. However, even if I do that, drinking will not be as late as 3 o'clock in the morning. 2:30 would be the maximum. There is actually a time of the latest starting period of when I've started my alcohol on these barrack walks, and it goes back to September 2024, and I remember the time vaguely, and it's midnight. That's the latest I've ever started my drinking when I've been at barrack. I much prefer to change my life a little bit. I want to get out more to like the 94 Club, Barolo Lounge, and stuff like that, in Yeovil. The only place I'm not too keen on, and it's because it's mostly young people that are in sexual relationships, kissing and cuddling teenagers, and obviously that's not a good suggestion when you've not had sex in your whole life, and at the age of 43 coming up 44. I mean, going back in the 1990s, if you went to those sorts of places, you'd be accepted by all ages. It wasn't seen as a crime, or it wasn't seen as being a sicko or anything like that. But we're in a different time, you see. So, and also the other thing is, as I said earlier, for photographing, I got told off for it, but I didn't get told to get out. But they give me like a ban for reasons for a short period of time. But this time around, they banned me indefinitely. So, and that's for smoking a fag just a few seconds before I left to go into the smoking area of that specific nightclub. Before this year, I never really went clubbing, because obviously things were really rough, things are different. But obviously, I went to the Palace nightclub once in 2006 on my cousin's 21st birthday, and I was surprised I didn't get any threats there. But what I did do is I nearly knocked a bloody whole, a tray of beers over, and I thought, don't want to do that, and spirits as well. I thought, if I fucking knock that over, I'm going to have to fucking pay for it, and I would, because obviously it'd be my fault, if I knocked it over, and there's nothing I could do about it. So I was very, very lucky that didn't occur, because I seriously would have had to have paid that, and that could have cost like 60-70 quid, It's not cheap what was on that tray, but luckily that chap managed to keep balance on that, on it, because I was pissed up myself, you know, I was pissed in there. And this happened directly after my cousins and relatives went upstairs to see all the sexy ladies that wanted sex and all the stuff, rests. But one of the ladies, who was a sexual, dark-haired sort of lady, had a right go at me, saying, "You're fucking sick, you're not coming up here, because you'll get your fucking head kicked in," and stuff like that. So I didn't bother, so I ended up walking out, and that's where I nearly knocked the tray over at the Palace nightclub. But also, when I walked to go out of the premises, there was a person arguing to get in through the back door into the Palace nightclub. So he didn't do nothing, he knew I was there, he didn't hurt me, he knew, he sort of, in actual fact, although he was kicking off, he did actually move to let me pass. And then obviously when I was walking back, I passed a couple of rough people and a couple of teenager sexual type women with older men and, you know, a crowd of people, and they just sort of walked past. And then obviously I ended up going to the graveyard, lying on someone's grave, trying to sober up a bit. And then obviously I had a miserable walk back home with a load of shouting, not so much at me, but a load of shouting in general. And then obviously I was coughing a lot on that night, I don't know what's causing that, and I went to bed. One other thing I want to mention, in today's time it'd probably be known as sad, or they make you sound like you're a sicko or something like that. But going back to 2006, on that specific night when I went to the Palace nightclub, I did actually see a teenage lady, you know, of a young, you know, sort of 18 or whatever, kissing and cuddling a man just a bit younger than me by about 5 years. And obviously I'm 5 years on top of that, but so that's not good, you know. So if you want a younger person, you're not going to get it, sort of thing. But it just goes to show that even back in 2006 at the Palace nightclub, on that one occasion in 2006, that you had a lady aged roughly 18, can't be younger, because I think you've got to be 18 to get in, and she was kissing and cuddling a man roughly the age of 40 or just under 40, but not by much. So you know, today you wouldn't see that. And then you've got to take into account I'm 4 years on top of that age. I've never had anyone in my whole life, so they're going to make it incredibly difficult to find anyone that's not a single mother or a complete stale piece of work that's very used and very off. Also, I can't remember properly, but I think they played Trance Generators' Harmonic Minor on that specific night that I went, which is on the Ultimate Trance album, CD 2, I think it's track 2, it's on the pink or purple colour CD. And I think it was on the Queen's birthday, I'm not sure, Queen event time period. And also you had Westfest, or a rave event, where everybody else went for that hardstyle night when I was at the Palace nightclub on Jason's birthday of 2006. Right, so they're pissing about with loud bikes timed to erections again. They did this last night. So I've reached the time period of where I was walking back to go. I can't delete the recordings, so you're just going to have to accept I made a bit of a mistake. I was going to say something and it went out of my head and I can't remember what it was. So just going to have to keep it. So there we are. They're pissing about with loud bikes to erections like they were last night, as you can hear. Oh, we've even got gunshot sounds. Oh well. I haven't really mentioned much about last night, have I? Pete was saying he wanted some fags and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it." So what happened was, he wasn't expecting me to walk to the 24-hour garage, because I needed to get fags myself. And when I got there, I phoned him up and he thought I was in my flat, and I surprised him, really, to be fair, because, you know, I thought if I got to go there myself, you know, why not get him the fags and he pay me back? Obviously he won't be able to pay me back this evening unless I go back early, because obviously he's drinking early, there's a possibility he might want an early night or something like that. But you know, it's I got them, but obviously he told me when I got them that that they might be the wrong ones. So whether the person behind the counter picked up the wrong ones, I don't know, because I was on the phone to him at that time. However, he was satisfied with them and he said, yeah, they'll be alright. And I left it at that. I didn't stop drinking there, by the way. I actually had a lot more to drink after that time, and I think I ended up singing DJ SS Anything Possible track, which is the track that says, I would do anything for you, I would do anything. So it's like a drum and bass track that came out in 1994, and it's on a CD called The Rollers Convention, which is an album by DJ SS. I used to have the CD years ago, but like I said, my CD collection's gone now, and if I want any music I'd have to download it, but I don't really listen to much in the way of jungle or drum and bass anymore, so it doesn't really make any difference. I pretty much lost most of my music, so I just sort of, there are certain tracks that I like, but anyway, I'll leave it there because I mention music too often, but you know, because I've always mentioned my music or what I like and that, so you know already. And if you don't know, just go on one of my videos where I've got music mentioned on the title, it'll be on there. In the winter it gets dark about 5 o'clock or just under, and in the summer it can be as late as 11 o'clock and you still got like dark nightfall sky after that. If you had a preference in time all year round, what time would you like it to get dark? Your own personal preference in time. Would it be like 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 9 o'clock? Well, I'm going to give you what I'd prefer in time. I'd say 7:30 to 8 o'clock. For the morning, daylight coming in about maybe 6:30, something like that. But that's just a preference of what I choose, you know. Obviously other people may prefer it getting dark at 11 o'clock at night and getting light at 3 in the morning, depending on your sort of person you are. But I thought I'd give my own opinion of what sort of time I'd like it to get dark in the evening. So maybe 7:30, maybe towards 8 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock in fact, because obviously it's nice when it's light for a time, but you still like a bit of darkness. But going back to the months of June and July, they really do depress me slightly, because also not only that, you get all the people out, the summer partying people, the people that cause trouble. It just turns out to be a piece of shit, basically. I'm not saying everybody will like it, it just seems to be like that. However, I've mentioned this in the past, there's certain times of the year where things get bad. This year's not been too bad, to be fair. I've had about 3 months where there's only been a few threats, and it's probably the least threats I've had between January and April since I lived at Yeovil, because the other years there's been at least a few threats, even on the bestest of days. So, you know, that's that. Right, so I'm going to talk about what's the roughest times of the year, or when people kick off, and it's been much the same at all places I've lived since 2005, since I lived on my own. Right, so we'll start with the roughest part of the year. The roughest month of the year is December. However, on some years it can be November, believe it or not. Even with the you know, the Christmas countdown and, you know, New Year's Eve problems and all that sort of stuff. November's a month where you've got Halloween, you've got the carnival, fireworks. I mean, I never really go to these sorts of places. I do like fireworks, but I never watch them. And since I've lived in Yeovil, the 4 years I've lived in Yeovil, I've been to no firework display or no carnival. January, roughly around about the 7th, it calms down. But on some years, it sort of just fades down slightly. But as soon as you hit the last day of January, which unfortunately is the same sort of time period when the burning started last year, February, it really kicks off. That's a really bad month. Then it sort of calms down in March. March is pretty much a nice calm month. April there used to be a couple of issues on the 2nd of April, which is the same time as one of my favourite jungle events called Dance Transmission Control, which was played in 1994. Although I don't listen to this sort of music anymore, it has played a part where there's been a bit of trouble on that specific date. Most of April though is pretty calm until you reach the build up to Easter, and it kicks off a bit then. May, the first week of May up until about the 2nd week, it starts to calm down after the 2nd week of May most years. But as soon as you reach June, especially the 9th of June, the 9th of June is one of the roughest times ever out of all places I've lived. I don't know why that specific day, but the build up to June, that specific time period is really rough. But as soon as you get past that period, sometimes it can take a week, 2 weeks to calm down. Not every year, but July, most of July is a pretty calm month. Most of August is a pretty calm month. When you reach September, it's usually the end of September, around about the 15th of September onwards, things start to kick off. And then obviously it builds up in October, gets slightly nastier. When you reach November, you've got Halloween and all that, and then people kick off then. And then obviously December's usually the roughest month of the year. However, sometimes November can have its days where it can be rougher on some years in that time period. In actual fact, there was one thing that really pissed me off, going off the subject a minute. I've been accused of trying to rape children at Glastonbury Festival, right? I think it was in 2023, right? Well, guess what? I've never been to Glastonbury Festival in my whole life. So it just goes to show how many people stir shit. And also the amount of people that mistaken me as Seven through time, since it began, when the first threat began in 2017, is unbelievable. The very first threat I recall having was Christmas, just after Christmas 2017. And I was listening to these old school tracks on the beach, or jungle tracks. And this person was saying, "That's it, Seven, you're being fucking smashed in, you're losing your life, I'm going to smash your guitar up." And I thought to myself, well, yeah, you've got the wrong person. I don't play a guitar, you know. I listen to old school electronica or whatever. And I thought, who's going to believe you, you know? Because I knew some druggy type people on the beach and whatever. And I was usually playing my old school tunes, but I was usually doing it in the evening, because obviously in the day you had all the families, all the children on the beach or whatever. But come 6 o'clock in the evening, that beach was completely dead at Burnham-on-Sea. And I was listening to a load of jungle tracks. Even with that, I never knew that the threat was going to escalate into everybody in Somerset or Dorset or in the southwest of England mistaking me as Seven everywhere. That's how incredible it is. I'm going to talk about music for a while. I don't need to, but I just fancy talking about it. What's the oldest electronica rave genre on the planet? Well, it could be jungle. And the reason I say that is because in 1969 there's a northern soul track called the Winstons, and they did a track called Colour Him Father, and also on the B-side there's a track called Amen Brother. On the B-side there's a 6-second drum solo which is known as the Amen Break, which they were using in the 1993 and 1994 jungle tracks. However, NWA Straight Outta Compton was a hip-hop track where they first used that sort of drum break. There's other tracks as well, but that's one of the earliest. Yeah, King of the Beats, I'm not sure if it's Mantronics, I've forgotten who does it. And then obviously Lenny D. Ice, We Are IE. Lenny D. Ice, We Are IE produced that track in late 1989, and that's the first jungle track that was ever made, but it didn't actually get released until 1991. However, if we go back to the electronicas in general, they say, I don't know how accurate this is, but they say that techno was first formed in 1981, but it didn't have its proper build-up, or its proper, it didn't turn into its proper form until the mid-80s, or maybe a bit later than that. And obviously in the mid-80s you had the Euro house scene, you had the trance scene and all the rest of it. But if you go back just a year before, 1984, you had tracks like Jar Screechy, Walk on Skank, which is a reggae track, and you had a lot of dubstep, a Cockney translation, I can't remember who did that. You know, you had that sort of stuff. And obviously if you go back to the 70s you have Bob Marley, but I just want to talk about the more recent stuff, and I want to talk about more in the way of electronica and rave genres. The earliest dark rave track ever made would be something like Goldie doing a track called Metalhead's Terminator. That would be where it really began. And also DJ Goldie is the one that developed time stretching to make that funky sound that occurs in the later jungle tracks of 1993 and 1994. So in 1989 you had producers like Technotronic that did tracks like Pump Up the Jam, and obviously if you go back to 1987 you had the Mars Pump Up the Volume, which is UK house music, but early house music. Then you had the theme from S-Express again, which is the housey type track, and there's quite a load of samples in that track, the theme from S-Express, that you're getting a lot of this acid techno music, sort of more on the instrumental side, the underground stuff. But back in 88 it was, that specific track was a commercial track. So let's give you some more details of what should we call it? Let me just go through it. Let me just stop the recording. I'll redo it when I've sorted myself out. In late 1991, when it came to the underground stuff, you had a couple of tracks, not many, but they developed in their proper jungle form on the Absolute 2 label and Reinforced Records. So you had tracks like also Face Recordings, by the way, Face Records. So the very earliest when it comes to the rave scene, when it came to the jungle changeover. So basically how it started was in 1991 you didn't really have much. It was more sort of I think you had stuff like Now That's What I Call Music 22 in that sort of time period. I can't remember what now it was. As soon as you hit 1992, that's when the sort of jungle scene broke off, but it started off as rave music. So you had like these Cookie Jar record company CDs or Telstar record CDs back in 1992 doing tracks or putting commercial tracks on compilations like The Shaman or Ebenezer Good or Prodigy Out of Space and all that, or Prodigy's Fire track, separate to the one which he did later on, which is Firestar. He did another track called Fire, which is on Rave 92. And you had other tracks as well, like the Smarties, is it Sesame Street or something like that? I can't bloody remember. I don't listen to that stuff because it's a load of shit. Anyway, I'll give you the earliest darkcore jungle tracks when the rave scene sort of changed over into the jungle scene. So it's like a changeover process, which they called darkcore and jungle techno. And I think the two Dark Troopers, when they did their track called Darkcore, was where they got the idea of calling it Darkcore from, which came out around about 1992. So the changeover would be when it sort of went into that jungly stuff. So the jungle stuff, the very early jungle stuff, or the earliest jungle stuff, would be stuff like Terry Mullen, Deluxe EP, from the Man Like Pennywise, Suspension of Disbelief and Mystery, The Alliance, First Impressions, Intense, Paradox. Incidentally, Intense were known as Babylon Time Warp before they were known as Intense. So they were doing like the end stages of the rave scene, and then it just suddenly went into the jungle scene when they went over into Intense. So it's slightly different music. When it came to jungle, it's more deeper. It's got a more it's got more structure to it. However, when they did those tracks back in that time, they were using pretty easy samples and can make the tracks pretty much very easy using just about 10 or 20 samples, and the track is completed. But you've got to take into account back in that time the equipment that they were using was a lot more difficult to work with, and the samples had to be done professionally, so it did take a lot of work making a track than how it could be done today. Today you could probably make a track like that in one day and it's done, but back then it was a little bit more complicated because you didn't have the technology back then that you have today, and they were using DAT tapes to save all these all these recordings that they do. Unfortunately, because of the 2013 period and the 2003 period where the government enforced music laws, and one way of doing it was making the suggestion through Scooter's music. So Scooter made a few tracks and they tried to mislead people off the rave scene into Scooter's music to try and force people into the club scene to get people off the underground music. So all those that were into happy hardcore or whatever, when it first came out in late 1994 onwards, fell for it. Also, if you go back to the 1990s, in 1997, 1998, you had the club scene as well, where they were trying to influence cool sounding tracks that were commercial, like Alice DJ Better Off Alone, DJ John The Launch, ATB 9pm Till I Come and stuff like that. And again, that threw a lot of people out of the happy hardcore scene into that. But you still had the jungle scene, that's the thing. They're trying to fold under the jungle scene because there's a lot of tracks that go against the system, if that's the right word to use. I just want to mention something, and this is at Bridgewater Fair. They were selling like these tape packs of old school jungle, old school techno, rave and all the rest of it, and the person who was selling the tape packs was telling me that all the stuff before 1995 is dangerous. Now, I never knew why he said that, but he did. He said that all the jungle stuff before 1995 is dangerous. Now, there could be some truth in that, because there's a lot of cultic samples in the 1993 and 1994 jungle tracks. However, it gets even better, because on Facebook, I was mentioning, this goes back about 10-15 years ago now, so I was asking, like, I've been single all my life, I'm getting fed up, never had sex all my life, and the fact that I've been abused as a child, not being able to have sex or whatever, and now I'm 43 and coming up 44 and still not had anyone or whatever, as it stands today. And this lady was saying that you want to get out of all that jungle stuff from the 90s, the 1993 and 1994 period, and she was saying it's all cursed shit. She's saying it's not safe, you need to get out of it. And, well, I've never really found that, but it's interesting that these comments or these pieces of information were mentioned. But anyway, let's get back to the earliest jungle tracks, yeah? As soon as the rave scene ended, I'll give you a couple of the more commercial tracks that you had back in that time. So you had Chaos and Julia set, Fear the Future, original Chaos mix. From the man like Pennywise, as I mentioned like just now, Suspension of Disbelief and Mystery, which is a record they could re-release, because obviously that passed the net, because obviously it's not one of those tracks where it seemed to be a problem. So Night Force Records reissued it, I think it's last year. Also, you had Scott and Keith Deranged, and it's well known for Get Busy Crew, and also for Scott and Keith's Deranged Part 2, where it's also known, and also you got Deranged Bonus Drums Mix, which is on Reinforced Records. And then obviously you had several on Absolute Records, so you had like K-Time by Kenny Kigo, which is one of the earliest darkcore jungle tracks. And obviously going on to Good Looking Records, you had LTJ Bookham, Demon's Theme, and that's another very early dark side jungle track. But you also had these other tracks, these technological tracks, and I'm wondering whether they're on about these deep technological tracks where they were warping the sounds and putting devilish cult samples in jungle tracks later on, sort of beginning in the year of 1993. So coming to the old school jungle tracks that I just mentioned, you had Pesce, Pro TGP, which had several tracks on there. So you had Warning, Gangster, and I think you had Dreams, and I think the 4th track was On the Firm, I'm not sure. And that was released, well, they were made in 1992, but they were released on Reinforced Records in 1993. And then you got the Alliance First Impressions, which is that really creepy track that sounds like, I mentioned it earlier on this recording actually, so it's like, it sounds like an eerie cellar with bats flying around, and then it goes into another chorus at 2 minutes 45 seconds through or something like that, which has the same piano sample as Way Out West, The Gift. And as I was saying earlier, the first part of that track is taken from one of Kate Bush's records, where they've slowed down that and they put other samples in and made samples of whatever they did back in that time period. And I just want to clarify, as I was saying earlier, the Alliance First Impressions was originally released on Legend Records before being reissued on Enforcer 6 later on in 1994. These tracks are not actually illegal tracks, but what they are is specialised tracks that were made back in that time period. So they're made specifically for DJ use, or for people that are into that sort of music. And obviously, although people were calling it rave, even when the rave scene ended in late 1992, it was jungle. If it's got that breakbeat, it's more jungle. But it was different to 1992, because in 1992 you'd have stuff like, well, let's put it this way, Baby D, Let Me Be Your Fantasy was actually a 1992 track, but it wasn't actually released until 1993, and that's one of the earliest, jungle tracks as well. But it's not really, it's sort of rave bordering jungle. It's a changeover stages. When you come to 1994, it was a bit more technological sounding. So you had tracks like DJ Fallout, The Ripper, and Love Me, which is on Storm Warning EP, which is cultic sounding type of jungle. Hyper on Experience, Disturbance Tango remix. I think that's a late 1993 track, which is on a 10-inch, and then you've got Half Step or something like that on the other side. Pesce, World of Music, that's quite a hard track. That's on Infrared Records, and you had Aim and Reprise or something like that on the other side, and you also had Sunray remix, Goldie remix, Rush remix or whatever. There's certain samples that they were using in the 1994 technological stuff, and I think that's what they're referring to when they say that some of this stuff is dangerous, or when these people told me that this stuff is not safe. You had other tracks as well. You had Coda, Space Tech, Ascend and Ultravibe, What Kind of World. And incidentally, Ascend and Ultravibe, by the way, is actually Dead Dread. So if you hear the track Dead Dread Bass, is exactly the same producer. And Foul Play, who does Being With You, which is on Jungle Mania 2 Telstar Records, which was advertised on TV back in the 90s. They're also known as Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And they did a track called Drowning in Her, and on the other side you had a track called We Are the Future. And there's quite a load of, there's loads of tracks I could go through. I could name loads. Obviously I don't listen to this music anymore, and a lot of it's just simple music, Obviously they didn't have the technology we have today, but it is easy to make those sorts of tracks even back then to some extent. But it was more difficult if you go back to like the 93 area, because the technology wasn't great. It wasn't until 1994 it suddenly sort of changed over and came in. People were working better, and you had sort of Source Direct. He did one of the earliest jungle tracks. He's only 17 years of age or something like that, and he did a track called Intellect, and he made it sound like it's a proper jungle track that's made by someone in their 40s, but he was very experienced in making that sort of music. And then you had Square Pusher. He did a track called Tundra. That's quite an interesting track, which was made in November 1995. And obviously one of the bigger tracks on Good Looking Records, it's not very often that you get these types of tracks being a big track, but you've got these breakdown tracks, which means that you've got like a jungle build up, and then it goes into like a trancey bit before coming back out into the drums again and the bass. There are several tracks like that. So you've got Dope Travelling Part 2 on Good Looking Records, which is also known as rugged vinyl. You've got Intense, Time Space Continuum. You've got Intense Paradox, Bliss and Tumble Free Me, if that's the correct title for the Jungle Techno 8 CD and Jungle Techno 8 LP that they released back in 1995 on Jumping and Pumping Records, also known as Stage 1000 or Passion Music. You've got DJ Panic Revelation, which is on Hardline Records, which had a breakdown part like that. But it's also on the the A side. You've got a track called DJ Panic's Daybreak, which is the track I prefer. Although I like breakdown jungle tracks, or did do when I was listening to it back in the day or up till recent times, I did prefer Daybreak to Revelation. So I think the catalogue number is GDM1 on that label. I'm not sure. Then you had hang on, let me get the track. Fantasy and Gemini. They did a track called Plane, and then on the other side there's a track called I Feel Free, which is, I think it's Rogue Trooper Records, possibly. I'm not sure. And then you have Rev P. But before we go any further, Peter Parsons, when he did that Rev P 1994 track and Rhythm Process on the A side, that was the main label for Happy Hardcore later on. And then you had DJ Seduction, who did a track called Subdub, and you had DJ SS Rollers Mix or whatever. Incidentally, also Impact Record is DJ Seduction's own label, like Good Looking Records is LTJ Bookham's own label. Right, I'm trying to think of some other breakdown tracks that I recall hearing back in the 90s and that. I'm trying to think what they are now. I've just thought of a few more. So you've had Daz Ellis's track, which is Undercover Agent. He did a track called Rougher Part 3, which says hypnotise you through the middle part of the track, which is taken from a black singer but sped up to give that sort of old school sound. They did that in quite a lot of the tracks, even in, especially in 1993. But I'm trying to think of, there's not many breakdown tracks that I actually know by name, only the more commercial ones I just mentioned. You did have Dillinger, Deadly Deep Subs, the VIP remix or something like that. I guess in some ways Pesce World of Music on Infrared Records has got that breakdown to it, because it says don't make me wait too long, no savage you. It doesn't say that, obviously. There's some unusual, possibly a different language, but it's that sort of way, but there's definitely other breakdown tracks, and there's probably a load I've never heard of before. These tracks that have the breakdown bit in them are known as rare groove jungle tracks or deep jungle tracks. It's as simple as that, or intelligent jungle. I mean, you've got Baby Kane. He did a track called Strange Greetings, which was produced in 1992 but didn't get released until either late 1992, early 1993 on Rough Guidance Recordings. Again, that's a classic track, back in its day, that is. Obviously this music's not approved today because the government have restricted the music that can be released commercially, and obviously when it comes to the government, they're not very friendly when it comes to specific music genres. And also, it's not just that, but you've got to keep up with the times, and music changes. So music's got to be a lot more happier, a lot more futuristic, but not futuristic as in like Code of Practices, Can We Change the Future by Photek, who's known as Rupert Parks, with Infiltrate on the other side, that specific record. It's got to be done in a way where it sounds futuristic, as in like trap music, with not done in like a futuristic like space sounding way. It needs to be done in sort of a futuristic city sounding way. So if you were to listen to like the wobble bass or the warp sounds of happier music in trap music, the government are trying to force everybody into the happier sounds, the better life, the more sexual sounding music, because jungle's probably one of the only categories in the rave scene that's not sexually based at all. You've got Foul Play, Being With You, You've got the House Crew Superhero, which goes, you can be mine, whatever. And you've got a couple of other tracks, but all in all, when it comes to sexuality, jungle's not the category you want for that, because there is basically 99.9% of all jungle tracks are not sexual. The only sexual tracks you'll get in the jungle scene are basically on Jungle Mania 2. You're not going to find them anywhere else. I mean, you've got Fallen Angels, Hello Lover. There's several mixes of that, but that's a commercial track. But if you like the deep underground stuff, quite simply, you're not going to find anything at all that's sexual, because it's not a sexual category. It's a bit like dark classical, dark ambient. It's very low tone music. It's very deep. It's not that way inspired. It's not that they're racist about sexuality or anything like that. It's just that you're not going to find music that's sexual when the music's on a very low grade. And I can tell you now, some of that jungle stuff is quite low sounding, especially in the 1993 and 1994 period. There's this geezer on a Good Looking Records documentary that actually mentions that you have a mainstream of shitty, simplified, fucked up, mangled sounds that comes out at you like a piece of shit out of a garbage can. And then he says, yes, unless you have what Bookham was playing, which is clean, fresh, intelligent, thought out melodies, pad patterns or whatever. So what he's referring to there is how simple it is to use old pieces of music to construct a jungle track back in the earlier part of the 90s to when this 1996 documentary occurred, discussing LTJ Bookham's more modern drum and bass changeover. On the 2nd of May 1997, they banned the aim and break, and they banned sampling from old pieces of music because the government put copyright on anyone using other producers' material unless you could pay the costs for the copyright, basically. So jungle tracks became a lot less frequent, meaning that people had to produce new sounds. When they were doing this, they were using a lot more happier sounds because they had to keep up with the times. You know, music's always changing. You can't just be stuck in one period of time. Even if you only like that sort of area, you know, it's been and gone, you know. And the other thing is, if you own these tracks, it's not actually illegal. Even if you have these tracks today, it's not illegal. But if you try and distribute them or try and copy them off for other people, say more than about 20 copies, then basically you're shot. It's as simple as that. You cannot give people this music. You can listen to it, you can play it out, you can put it in your car if you want, to some extent. Obviously broadcasting live, you know, can't be done, but obviously if you're playing it for personal use or anything like that, it's not a problem. However, when they did these compilations back in the 1990s, you will find that there's some distortion problems, or they did something to some tracks, like put a glitch in there when it came to these sorts of tracks when they were putting them on CD, if it's a bad track. And that's basically to stop people copying them or selling them on. But they made the tracks so that they're okay to listen to, you know, but they have to do that because obviously if you pirate that sort of material, it's not good, you know. When it comes to me, obviously I used to listen to all these tracks, you know. I heard of all the rave events. Many people in my age group have heard of all this. They know about all the underground tracks, all the breakdown tracks, all the deep tracks, all the chattery tracks, you know. It was across all the rave tapes, you know, back in the 90s, across the Dreamscape sets, across the Helter Skelter, across the Dance Trance, the Dance Planet, the Fantasia, the Amnesia House, you know, the Edge, you name it. But it's not approved today. Because, as I was saying like just now, the future of music
is changing all the time. It's like these people like Elvis Presley, say back in the 1990s. It's much different today. Where do you hear of that anymore? Well, you do, because it's a commercial artist. But when it comes to the underground stuff, it's only there, it's known as contemporary music, and it's only there for a short period of time. And once it's gone, it's gone. However, if you have the original copies, or the original recordings, as long as you don't copy them off for people and use it for personal use, that's not a problem. It's not illegal. However, there are some records that have been made illegal, mostly those promos like the Alliance remix of New Creation, the unreleased version of New Creation on Legend Records. However, it's quite a big track. When it comes to Legend Records, they're quite big. So they did tracks like Legendary Volume 1, so you had Gwanj Spinback, The Execution with Deep Concentration. Then you had something like Adrenaline on Legendary Volume 2. I can't remember what's on that one because I've never really known. And then on Legendary Volume 3 you have DJ Leon Gwanj, Too Deep, with Leon Tango Solutions on it. Obviously you've got other tracks as well, you know, Q Project Champion Sound, the original version, because there's an Alliance remix as well, which is the most commercial version. That's commercial music, but it's commercial to some extent. It really depends really. Very difficult to think what to say while you've got a train passing, to be fair. It's commercial, but it's commercial as it stands in the underground scene, or the alternative scene, or whatever you want to call it. Because today, Q Project, the Alliance, or Gwanj, or whatever you want to call it, is basically, I'll give you the names of but basically DJ Gwanj is Simon Matthews. The Alliance is Paul Smith. And Q Project is Jason Greentag. Well, they've formed another label now, because Legend Records doesn't exist anymore, and they're known as Total Science as it stands today. And because they've released those tracks, because they're big tracks, even though they sound really underground, I don't think when it comes to that specific label they'll ever be able to get rid of those tracks, because they're too well known. So there's a possibility, it's unlikely obviously, but there's a possibility that they'll reissue Q Project Champion Sound, reissue Legendary Volume 1, 2 and 3, or, you know, cuts from those records, you know, in the future. And there's a possibility they would even reissue the Alliance First Impressions, which is one of the more moodier tracks in the jungle scene. Now a lot of people going to that Alliance First Impressions is a very interesting track actually. As I mentioned earlier, there's samples from Way Out West, A Gift. The Way Out West did their own piano sample to the second part of that track, but that Alliance First Impressions has been mistaken as Dark and Moody Volume 4 and Dreamscape 8. So DJ SS did some promos in the 90s called Dark and Moody. He did Dark and Moody Volume 1, Dark and Moody Volume 2 and Dark and Moody Volume whatever, yeah, up to 4, something like that. Well, the track listing is correct for the Dreamscape 8 Groove Rider mix, the New Year's Eve 1993 mix, but many people refer to the Alliance First Impressions as being Dark and Moody Volume 4, because quite simply it's got that really low sound where it sounds like basically a cello with bats flying around for about a minute and a half before, you know, going into the drum lines and the breaks or whatever, and then obviously it has a second part as I just mentioned. So it can be a bit confusing, you know, people can get confused when it comes to music as well. So although the Alliance First Impressions does sound like a pretty deep, low down track, or has got that rare groove feel to it, or feels like it's the most underground track on the planet, if you want to put it like that, it actually isn't. It's actually quite a big track, especially back in its day. Obviously today it's not, but back in its time it would have been. Because if you look at Dance Trance Kenny Ken, the wedding anniversary, and the way that Wax Doctor and Alex Reese's Jazz Juice record mixes into Dread Bass, you'd think, oh, Dread Bass sounds like it's an underground track, you know. But it's not. It's one of the most commercial tracks that's released on every Ministry of Sound Jungle CD today. So, you know, you've got to be careful with that. It's just the way the DJs mix it. They want to make it sound like it sounds underground when they do these mixes. But they are actually commercial tracks. A majority of what I mentioned tonight, the tracks I mentioned, although they sound like they're underground tracks, they've had to go through some, you know, to get released and to be commercially played or to be commercially released on a record, it's got to go through laws, music restriction laws, to pass that, you know, thing. Obviously if it's a 10-inch promo or an unreleased track and it's not officially been released, then that might be a different issue. But obviously when it comes to the Alliance remix of New Creation by DJ Gwanj on Legend Records, even though that's not been released, it has actually now been released on Sublogical Recordings, but it's not an illegal track because it's being produced by a well-known producer now known today as Total Science. But you do have these occasional white labels that have been produced. I mean, look at Congo Natty. He did a couple of Jetstar recordings. So he did Soundman Wishing on a Dream. He did Director Metal. This is an example EP. And basically, they're not illegal because it's coming from a well-known producer, even though it's only a promo. And some of these DJs only release promos. But the thing is, they've got to do away with this sort of music because obviously we've got to keep up with the times, and obviously there are dangerous tracks out there, but I don't know the full scale why they need to do it fully. But like I said, as long as you don't distribute these music, I mean, you're taking a risk if you put this sort of stuff on eBay or sell it to anyone, especially when it's that sort of material. So to play on the safe side, yeah, if you're going to listen to that sort of music or still listen to it, the best thing you can do is just keep it for yourself, not distribute it to anyone else, like on eBay or anything like that, because if it is dangerous stuff, then obviously, you know, it's not good, and you're putting your life at risk if the CIA or FBI or whatever are not happy with it. When it comes to me, I used to listen to this stuff, but today, as it stands today, I basically have nothing at all when it comes to this sort of music. I mean, there are a few tracks that have been reissued in 2023 and 2024 on record, such as, I think it's Q Project Champion Sound. I'm surprised they reissued the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, Drowning in Her, because that's been reissued. They reissued Hyperon Experience, Lord of the No Lines and Disturbance Tango Remix several years ago on Night Force Records. They've reissued from the man like Pennywise, Suspension of Disbelief and Mystery. What else have they reissued? Lifting Spirits, Will I Dream has been reissued, which is on a record that has Giggle and Rush and Break It Up on it. But they're like limited copies, so they only release so many copies. I think a lot of it's mostly for like DJ use or for those that like the music back in their day. However, when it comes to the mainstream stuff, well, let's move on from here, because we've got other music as well, like the rock scene, the heavy metal scene. You know, it's all temporary music. That's what I mean. It's contemporary music, and eventually all this is going to be thrown out, because if it doesn't go in the 100 chart position, or it's not on the international music database that's government held with all commercial tracks since 1952, then eventually it's all going to go. This is why React Records, that does all this Euro house and techno and stuff like Laurent Garnier or whatever, they went to Resist Music just to fold under all the React stuff going back, what, 2010, something like that. I can't remember the year now. So, you know, it's all this music going, all this hip hop that they got in America, that's going to end up going soon, especially the stuff that's not commercial. It's all got to go, you see, the whole lot, because obviously when they forward the future, they're going to change everything. This is all temporary music. They're not going to want dangerous gangster music occurring in say 20 years from now, because they're trying to change the way people live. They've got people on hold. If they can rig up their minds on those tracks in the hip hop scene, it will keep them dumbed down for a time, and then what they'll do gradually is they're probably going to like Christianity or change it into religious music, and eventually they will take out all that nasty stuff that they're saying in these hip hop tracks, and everybody will sort of change, and then they'll start doing away with, which is good in some ways, because obviously if you're doing that to improve the situation or get people out of the negative lyrics into a more happier style, or try to change the behaviour pattern of people to be nicer, that really is a good thing to do. But you know, if your mind is set on one sort of music, especially if it's like sound based, it's not helpful for those that are like into that sort of music. But then again, if you look at these sorts of tracks, they are quite negative sounding, you know. It's sort of, you know, they are very deep, very low and very cultic sounding, so it doesn't make you surprised that they need to change this all over. I mean, this is what I mean. So I'm 43 years of age, coming up 44, and there's not really that many people that know about this music in my age group, because a lot of people that are into the jungle scene are over the age of 50. But then again, even if they're over the age of 50, even though it's commercial back in its day, you've got to look at how many people are never going to have heard this sort of music. People have heard of drum and bass, yeah, but they're not going to have heard of these types of tracks that are specialised. It's a different altogether now. And also, people won't realise the difference between the commercial jungle tracks or the underground jungle tracks either. So obviously when it comes to the commercial jungle tracks, they're like happy, jolly, gangster, violent sort of ragamuffin sort of lyrics with happy sounds and jolly samples. So for example, as I was mentioning earlier, M-Beat, which is Jungle is Massive, which is known as Incredible, would be a happy, jolly, good life, sexual type of jungle track. Well, I wouldn't say sexual, but a good life jungle track. Or Shy FX Original Nutter would be a jungle track that's happy sounding and gets the crowd going. Or Super Sharp Shooter by the Ganja Crew or DJ Hyper, whoever does it. When you compare that to the underground scene, it's the total reverse. It's like if you were to look at jump up drum and bass to old school jungle, it sounds different. It's the same with the same genre. So the commercial jungle, like the tracks I just mentioned, those 3 tracks, would have a happy, jolly, good life sound. But if it came to like a jungle track like Pesce Warning or Rev P 1994, Pesce World of Music, or Dope Travelling Part 2, or DJ Panic Revelation, or The Alliance First Impressions, or DJ Lee and Guanj Too Deep, or Orca Intellect, or, you know, tracks like that, it would sound a lot different. They'd be a lot more moodier, but they wouldn't be moodier in like an aggressive way. They'd just be very low tone music. It'd be like low music that's very deep, very soulful, with a lot of... Well, let's put it this way, if we go back about 7 years ago, when I was still into all this shit, I was after a specific track and I never knew what the track was. It's very similar to the Alliance First Impressions, but it has more cult samples in it. So I was given a description of it sounding very similar, like a futuristic sounding... It's got like a futuristic sounding drive to it. I'm talking about the breakdown part of this track. So you've obviously got the jungle breaks. It sounds like it's 1993, but I'm not sure. I'm not even sure whether they got it released properly, because it doesn't sound a very good track at all, I tell you that. So it gives a sound, it's sort of like, you can feel that it's spiritual, I tell you that. It's like, it's got a spiritual sound, and it's like a heavy spiritual sound. But it's like, how do I word it? It makes it sound like there's no one around, and it makes it sound like it has a overwhelming presence of evil in the sound, in the music, but it's done in like a low down way, but like I said, as if there's no one around, with a lot of crying type samples, and like pendulums falling out of clocks, like sort of sounds. But it also sounds like dun dun. But so when I say a pendulum dropping, it's like that, and it sounds like the sounds are warped. So for example, you've got like symbols or suggestions where it sounds like the sounds of these samples that they use in the music are bending, and if you were to picture the image of the music of that specific track, because I don't know what it is, I don't have a clue, but it has similar sounds to what Pesce World of Music has, and maybe Fallen Angels Hello Lover DJ Hype remix, it might have some form of that to it, not quite the same, but just to give you an idea of what I mean by that heavy sort of spiritual sound. Maybe Well Beloved Immortal, which is the newest track that came out in 2013 area on 7th Story Project, so maybe a bit of influence on that as well. So it makes a suggestion if you were to listen to it, and it's one of the hardest jungle tracks I've ever heard in my whole life. It's definitely a 1993 track, and it's definitely produced by someone that knows what they're doing. It's not actually a very safe track by the sounds of what I've heard of it. So it makes a suggestion if you were to play it, the electronic equipment you're playing on would get cursed and break down, or it just makes that sound like it gives that unsafe type of sound to it, and it sounds like you can picture in the music, it's telepathy, it's got that sort of vision to it. So it sounds like a cellar with glow sticks or strip lights that are facing downwards, but like really old-fashioned ones, and it sounds like instruments of really creepy old instruments that are bending into scary shapes. If you were to listen to it, it's very moody, but it's not aggressive. It's done in like a very soulful way, so it sounds like extremely creepy but extremely low down, but it's got a futuristic drive to it. So if you were to imagine the backing music on the Most Haunted programme, you know, where you've got Yvette Fielding and whatever, you've got that like humming sound. It's done like that, but it's got more of a drive to it, it's got a futuristic sound to it. But even though it's got that futuristic sound to it, they make it sound like it's lower than the sound of that sound you get in Most Haunted, but with like a futuristic drive to it, where it's got some sort of atmospheric pressure to the music. And then obviously you've got like an overpowering sound over that, and obviously, like as you expect, it's going to be one of those breakdown tracks. Obviously, it doesn't sound a safe track, but even though it doesn't sound a safe track, it's one of those tracks that gives you that excitement if you were to listen to it. So obviously, like I said, I don't know what that jungle track is called, but when I'm referring to commercial music or underground music, there's definitely a difference when you compare it to tracks like Original Nutter, Super Sharpshooter or Wicked Wicked Junglist Massive. Right, just to let you know, I'm currently at Stowford, which is near Barwick, and I always think of a jungle track here as well. I don't know why. It could be because of the title or the suggestion of the track, and it's called the Anthill Mob 123 Adrian Blunt Remix on Underdog Recordings. That's quite a commercial track to the track I was talking about like just now. In actual fact, when you compare actually most of the tracks I've mentioned, even those underground tracks I've mentioned this evening, when you compare it to that track I can't find the title to, which I just mentioned as sounding like a buckled track that sounds very devilish, then that definitely is 4 or 5 times more powerful than well, basically every track I mentioned. But it has similar sounds. Like I said, it's got similar sounds to Pesce World of Music on Infrared Records, mixed with, say, some form of Fallen Angels Hello Lover DJ Hype remix, and with samples like the Alliance First Impressions on Legend Records, but also on Reinforced Records later on. It's a combination, but this specific jungle track I've never found the title of. It's probably never been released, but it sounds much harder than all of those other tracks I've mentioned this evening. It's got a very hard, dark touch to it. It doesn't actually feel like it's safe to listen to. How that's been made, I don't know. But if you were to listen to it, although it doesn't sound safe, it gives you that feel. It's like that excitement if you were to listen to it. It's not something you can really play to people. It's not a safe track, but it's definitely an interesting one. I'll never find it, and I'll never get the title. But it is a track that I've heard at some point in the past. For example, you've got a label called Cryo Chamber Records, which does all this sort of dark ambient stuff. This track beats all that as well. This specific jungle track I'm on about, you're not going to get a track that's made in this way that sounds this hard. But it's not done in a cheerful way. It's done in like a singled out way, like someone's being singled out, or they're crying in a dark place with no one around, and you've got like these buckled instruments that are going into like dark scary shapes, and the vision of like upside down glow sticks or really old strip lights facing downwards in a like creepy way. So but it's a very interesting track, and it's got a very that's another thing I want to mention. It's got a very similar drum break to Lifting Spirits Will I Dream on Lifting Spirits recordings as well. And just to let you know, although I used to listen to all this stuff back in the 90s or whatever, maybe this section of the 2000s up until about 2016 area where my music changed slightly, well, believe it or not, I don't listen to any of this anymore. Do you want to really know what I listen to today? And it might shock you because you wouldn't expect it, but I do actually listen to the 70s and 80s pop tracks, or the 90s pop tracks. I've actually gone back into that. So when I got into this in 1994, when I bought my first jungle tape from Tech Check Records in Bridgewater, which is called Dance Trance Randall Mission Control, 2nd of the 4th 1994, I've listened to it for many years. I know what the jungle scene is now, and obviously a lot of it is simplified sounds. Going back to that one track though, it is interesting though. How that was made, or how they did that, has bloody surprised me, but I'm never going to find that track title. And I can tell you now, it's harder than any other jungle record that's ever been released. You're not going to get a track like it. You're looking at least 5 times more powerful in the sound as well, on the cultic samples. And it's a very low track. It's not a happy track. It's like a singled out track with no one around. You know, there's no track like it. How that track was made, I do not know, but the person who made it has got a fucking very hard head, I tell you that. So anyway, as I was saying, my music is sort of 70s, 80s and 90s. It's mostly pop music, what my family listened to, and I don't mind listening to a bit of rock tunes, in fact, because I've got a neighbour called Peter, and he's into all this progressive rock. And I'm not really keen on it, to be fair, but over the last year, where he's been playing it to me, you know, many times, you know, I've sort of got to like it a little bit. It's still, I wouldn't classify it as my favourite music, but I can get into it, if you get what I'm saying. So, and also, although I never liked happy hardcore, I will mention this, I was gullible to the fact that I was listening to happy hardcore as a kid and thought it was cool. But, you know, a lot of the people that were listening to happy hardcore was sort of, I'll get pilled up tonight, I'll go to the fucking club, or I'll fucking do this and do that, you know. And they were always like the leader of the gang, acting like fucking Gary Glitter. Fucking weirdos. But anyway, I'm going to end that recording, because obviously, when it comes to happy hardcore, it's not really a genre I'm actually into. I used to like the jungle scene, but what happened really, it sort of ended around 2016, I sort of got out of it. I mean, I listen to it if it's on YouTube or I'm pissed or whatever, but I'm not going to go out of my way and buy a jungle compilation or anything like that, you know. It's sort of like that. And then I got into this dark ambient stuff and Cryo Chamber Records, which I discovered in 2019. And I just went back to my normal stuff, like, you know, 70s, 80s, 90s. I mean, jungle's there, but it's for those hard-headed, minded people that think it's cool, like that devilish sound to it. You know, that's what it is. It's about the power of the sound. That's what they were doing, and that's why people liked it. But it's not about that. It's about liking music. I mean, over the years I got to like all this music, but you know, with the stuff going missing or whatever, and you know, the robberies, if you want to call it that, or whatever, and losing my stuff and things going or whatever, I don't listen to this music anymore, but that's not the reason. I mean, I was going out of it already before that all occurred. Because the last robbery where my stuff was, you know, because there was no CCTV, as I was mentioning earlier, in the garage of where I had it placed, they took all my stuff. But that's not the reason why I don't listen to that music anymore. I've just sort of gone out of it. I prefer the commercial stuff. I prefer to have a happier life. Try and change my life, because I'm 43 years of age, coming up 44. And maybe that curse on the jungle scene stopped me getting sex all my life. Fuck knows. But anyway, I'm going to end the recording there. And obviously, when you watch this on YouTube, leave your comments. And, well, that's assuming I don't have to state any problems or whatever, because obviously this is a mixed documentary. But because there hasn't been many problems today, I managed to say, you know, mention other subjects like music and, you know, what times of the year I like and whatever. So, you know, well, not what times of the year, you know, what times I like drinking, you know, or whatever. So, yeah. Right, so I mentioned Well Beloved, Immortal, which is on 7th Story Recordings, which is on the Dark Arts EP, while mentioning that specific jungle track. If I was to compare this specific track that I mentioned, which gives that cultic sound or gives that unsafe sound or makes a suggestion of instruments bending into buckled shapes that are very dangerous or whatever in that specific jungle track, then I'd probably say it's about 4 times harder or 4 times more cultic than Well Beloved Immortal track. That's how hard that fucking track is. Except it was released in 1993. I'm not actually sure if it ever was released, because I can't find the title. I've never heard it. I only heard it that once, going back many years ago when I was about the age of 14. I mean, you look at tracks like Pesce World of Music or Dope Travelling Part 2, you know, they got that sort of vibe to it, you know, but it's nothing compared to this track that I'm on about. Nothing at all. And it's a lot more cultic. It's got that atmosphere, that pressure around the track, that mystical sound it's got is very heavy. Anyone that listens to that track, is even in the middle of the day and on a sunny day, you're going to pick up on that big time, that track, if I ever found out what that track is. It's a very interesting track. Obviously it's not good, it's a very bad track, but it's definitely a fucking good track. Obviously I wouldn't listen to it today, and I'm not after that track, but because obviously what's the point in listening to music just for the buzz that you get from the dark sound it makes? But you know, going back several years ago, then yeah, I would have been after that track. So I'm going to give you a bit more on this track, because obviously I want to be a bit more easy with it, because I know I should be ending the subject now and sort of talking about other things, but it's got influences or suggestions to Pesce World of Music, as I said, on Infrared Records. Bits like the Alliance First Impressions on Legend or Reinforced Records. It's got a similar drum break to Lifting Spirits, Will I Dream. And obviously, like I said, like just now, Well Beloved Immortal on 7th Story Projects, which was released in 2013. It's got some form of samples from that as well. But how the fuck he made that track sound like that? And if you listen to Fallen Angels, Hello Lover, DJ Hype remix, the breakdown part, how the fuck this person made that track sound so fucking heavy and dark, it's beyond belief. Because it's at least 5 times harder than any other jungle track I've heard in the underground scene. I don't think this track's ever been released. It came out in 1993. And you could listen to it, and it's just like I was saying earlier, it's got like that, it's at you, you know, it tracks at you. If you were to listen to it, they make the suggestion that it's like, oh, your equipment's closing down, or it's going to take control of your equipment, or it's going to fucking buckle it up, or it's got a heavy demonic sound above it. So it's sort of like that. It's not Pesce Warning. I mean, that's just a simple fucking cheesy track in some ways, you know, on Pro TGPO, as I mentioned earlier. But this specific track, how they did it, I do not know. But it was a really fucking good track when I heard it when I was about 14 years of age. But you know, and obviously the drum breaks were interesting. They were similar to Lifting Spirits, Will I Dream on Lifting Spirits recordings, which I already mentioned. But if I ever came across that track, or I've ever heard it again, I'd definitely, you know, mention it. But I don't think I'd ever put the track on the internet, because obviously it is a very unsafe sounding track. But it's not a violent track, that's the problem. It seems to be one of those tracks where it's very low down. It's like you're singled out in a place where there's no one around. It sort of gives that sort of feeling. And like instruments are bending into scary shapes that are already scary looking, you know, in a dark place, you know. It's very unusual. It's a very interesting track. And the breakdown part is slightly longer than most jungle tracks as well, so it's about 2 minutes long, but it's done in a sort of cultic way. And there's also bass bits in that breakdown part of the track done in a controlled way, in a way how they make it sound. Very interesting.